I'm sure you all remember minimal pairs from last week. So now I have for you a few words, and we're going to make some minimal pairs for those words. Things to remember are that you need to be sure that your minimal pairs have the same number of sounds. For example, leg and egg would not be minimal pairs because they don't have the same number of sounds. Okay, our first word is bind, and I've underlined the B, so it's the B that I'd like you to change when you make your minimal pair. So B, okay, bind. How about find with an F? Find. But grind would not be a minimal pair because it doesn't have the same number of sounds. It's got an extra consonant in there. So bind, find, mind, hind, rind, lined, like lined paper, or they lined up for the movie tickets. Okay, next one is lean, and I've underlined the N, so we need to switch out the N for something else. Lean, leaf, lead, leak, leap. Lots of possibilities there. Okay, next one is red. And there I've underlined the vowel, so we need to switch out the vowel. R, vowel, D. So let's say, okay, red, read, road, rad, rude. Lots of possibilities. Rood, nope, that's no good. But there are a lot of others that are. Wish, okay, I've underlined the sh. Even though it's spelled with two symbols, in the spelling, it's actually one sound, right? Wish. So we could have whip, win, whim, will, wick. Lots of possibilities for wish. Okay, then we've got look, and there again I've underlined the vowel. So we want to swap in another vowel for look. Leak, lick, lack, lock. Lots of possibilities. Okay, next column we've got win. So we want to swap in another vowel. For win, how about wean, wane, wan? Yeah, quite a few there. Okay, for path, path. Swap out that TH, that theta sound. Pad, pap, pal, pan, pat. Okay, then we've got job. So now here's interesting. Even though we use two symbols to represent the j in job, it is officially just one sound. So knob, hob, lob, rob, those would all be minimal pairs with job on the first sound. Then we have trash. Yes, trash. So we could have crash. Maybe that's all we could have is crash, changing the one sound. And foam. So O, swap that out. Ooh, this is hard. Foam, fame, fem, oh, fame, fem, firm, right? So those ers could be used also. So sometimes you need to look a little far afield to find these minimal pairs, but you can almost always do it. All right, now I've got some pairs of words, and I'd like you to tell me if they are actually minimal pairs or if I'm trying to trick you. Okay, I'll read them first, and then you take a bit to think, all right? One and sun, clasp and grasp, learn and turn, slice and nice, spite and spot, respire, perspire, large charge, feud, rude, thrash, crash, gerbil, and journal. Okay, so let's think about me. Have you think about those. One and sun. Yes, those are a minimal pair. You've got W, N and S-N. So those are. Don't let the spelling trick you. Clasp and grasp. Okay, so the asp part is the same, but you will see that in clasp you've got KL, but grasp you have GR. So it's not a minimal pair because two sounds are changing. Okay, learn and turn. What do you think? They are a minimal pair. Learn and turn. Okay, slice and nice. This is another, you might think it's a minimal pair, but in fact, we have SL versus N, so it's not the same number of sounds, so they are not minimal pairs. Spite and spot. Are they minimal pairs? The spelling makes it look like they're not, but in fact, they are. Spite, spot. Okay, this next one, respire, perspire. I always have to stop and think about this one. They are not minimal pairs, but it is tricky. So the spire is the same, but we have r and per. So those are not the same. It's two differences there. Large and charge. Minimal pairs? Yes, they are. So the L and the ch are both single sounds. So it's just one sound that changed. So those are minimal pairs. All right, next one, feud, rude. Is that a minimal pair? I hope you said no, because feud has the J in there that rude doesn't, right? It's not feud and rude, it's feud and rude. So two sounds for feud, one sound in rude. Okay, last one, gerbil, journal. What do you think? Spelling's pretty different, but they are in fact a minimal pair. Gerbil, journal. Just the B or the N changes in those. Now I'd like us to switch over to think more about words. So for yourself in your notebook or on a little scrap piece of paper, write down for yourself a definition of the word word. Try to be careful. Try to include everything that's a word and try to exclude things that are not words. And then if you've got others in the room with you, share your definitions to see what you each decided to focus on. So I'll give you, you probably want to pause and do this, maybe write for about a minute on a definition of word, and then come back to me. Okay, I hope you've got your definition of word now. So to think further about it, what are some properties that all words have? And also, what's something that's true of a word, but maybe not true of a phrase? These are just ways for me to ask you to think a little further on your definition of word. Now, also, once you've got the definition down, let's think about these things that I have on the overhead. Are they words? How do they, they're funny things, right? I specifically chose funny, non-ordinary things. You know, I could have put words like book and dog up there, and you say, of course, those are words. We know they're words. They're separated by spaces when you write them. Everybody learns them. They're great words. But here are some strange things, and I'd like to see how your definition of word deals with them, what your definition of word will do with some of these. So, whatchamacallit? Is that a word? Is it in the dictionary? Is it a phrase that's all smushed together? How about ain't? A lot of people say that. Is it, how do you feel about ain't? Would that fit into your definition of word? Does a contraction fit into your definition of word? How about gonna and wanna? Those are both sort of phrases going to or want to, a lot of people write them as a word. Are they really a word? What do you think about that? Unthaw. So a lot of people say that. Other people say it doesn't make sense. Is it a word? Is it something that's created? How about Mrs. MRS period? Is that a word? It's only abbreviated there. Do you ever see it written? Something to think about. How about Netflix and chill? Is that a word? Does it have a meaning? Does the combination of those three words have a meaning different than those three words individually? Because maybe that means in some sense it's its own word, right? Because there isn't anything about getting colder in that, which chill might entail. How about chillax? It's a word like brunch, newly formed. Don't think it's in the dictionary though. How about the numeral symbol for 8? Is that a word? Or the symbol for percent? Or an interjection like huh? Or nother, such as when people say, I need a whole nother day to do this. A word like ginormous, it's kind of created. Y'all, yins, yous, these are versions of a second person plural that might not be standard, but they get used a lot. Are they words? And last one for you to think of kind of goes with chillax, a bromance. Is that a word? Where does it fit with respect to your definition? So if you thought that writing a definition of the word word was going to be easy, I didn't intend for it to be easy. It's kind of a challenging thing. And it's not easy particularly to decide if those things are words. It can be easy if you take a very rigid criterion, like it has to be in the dictionary for it to be a word, or it has to be a certain age for it to be a word, or there can't be any spaces in between parts of it for it to be a word. This is part of me trying to show you that sometimes we need to tolerate ambiguity and wait a little bit before we can pronounce something right or wrong, yes or no. Maybe we need to get a little more evidence or look at it from a different perspective, because sometimes different perspectives will give us different answers. Okay, this is, not to scare you, but this is going to be a challenging part of the course for some people, and for other people, it's going to be really easy. When we move into stress and syllables, I'm good at hearing syllables. I'm not very good at hearing stress. It took me a long time to learn to do that, but we are going to do some practice to ensure that everybody is able to deal with syllables and deal with stress, because it's important. Not so much for little kids you might work with in the future, but if you ever work with adults who are learning English, stress is something that really gives them a hard time, and it's also something that's very, very important for other people to understand them easily. Because stress plays a big part in how we're retrieving words from our stored memory. Okay, so starting easy, we could say a word has at least one syllable. That's one characteristic of a word. So let's look at these words and tell me how many syllables they've got. Thin, 1. Smush, 1. Captive, 2. Toy, 1. Volcano, volcano, 3. Banana, banana, 3. Hummingbird, hummingbird, 3. Oregano, oregano, 4. Prepubescent, prepubescent, 4. Antediluvian, antediluvian, 6. Eighths, 1. Strange. Monologue, monologue, 3. And now here, so I hope those were easy for you to agree. Those are the number of syllables that are in those words there. Now I have some trickier words. Foil, fire, vial, vial, flower, flower. People go back and forth on whether they think those are 1 or 2 syllable words. Some people, in fact, call them 1.5 syllable words. And you will notice one of the things about them is that they have diphthongs in them, which is an inherently longer kind of vowel, which might lend some weight to the idea that they are more than 1 syllable. And then they're followed by an L or an R, which are 2 sounds that are very problematic for kids to learn to produce right. So there's a lot going on there with them. And so I would say there's not a right or a wrong answer as to how many syllables are in foil, fire, vial, vial. But often we can make a judgment based on an individual pronunciation. So if somebody says fire, sounds like 1. If somebody says it's on fire, that sounds like 2. So it's something that often individual pronunciations can help us figure out more easily than just thinking about it, listening to a real pronunciation. Okay, so words also will have a stressed syllable. So every word that's a content word is going to have at least 1 stressed syllable. So a content word would be a noun or a verb or an adjective, something that gives us content. In opposition to content words are function words. Function words are things like conjunctions, prepositions, pronouns, articles. So they're kind of, I like to talk about them as the grammatical glue that holds things together. They might not add a lot of meaning to the sentence, but they allow the parts to be combined. So sometimes the function words will be kind of under-articulated and a little bit hidden. So it's possible that in a function word you will not find a stressed syllable. But every content word is going to have a stressed syllable. Now, building from the minimal pairs, we also have stress pairs. And these are words that are differing only in the stress. So that's pretty cool. Proper name variants from different countries, or the male version, the female version, often are stress pairs. Okay, so we can look at Louis, male version, versus Louise, female version, right? Louis, Louise. So Louis has stress on the first syllable, Louise has stress on the second syllable. Or Louis and Luis, a Spanish version, changes the stress, Luis. We have English Mary, stress on the first, versus more of a French Marie, Marie, stress on the second. When people want to make their shopping experience at Target sound a little nicer than it might actually be, they call it Target. And so that's another instance of moving the stress. So when the stress is on the second syllable of a 2-syllable word, it makes things sound fancier. Probably because that's how it is in French, but it definitely does that. So I don't know how many of you watched the program that had Steve Urkel, but if you did, you might remember the time when Urkel's cousin came, named Stefan Urkel, who was much cooler, much more suave, and it was just Steve with different clothes. And the stress shifted, so he sounded better. So when we shift the stress, it could be for a female version, a version of a name from a different country, or to make it kind of Frenchified and sound fancier. Okay. So this is, I'm just trying to give you examples where seeing the differences in stress, you can relate those differences to things that you have heard in your life. Okay, so in word stress, as I said, every content word is going to have at least one stressed syllable. It'll have a primary stressed syllable. We also can call this the lexical stress because it's part of the word's dictionary definition. And in our brains, the lexicon is our mental dictionary where we store the shapes of words as well as the meanings, but I like to talk about the shapes of the words. So the word stress is some type of additional salience or importance placed on a syllable. It might be a little longer. it might have a slightly higher pitch. It might be slightly louder. It might use greater muscular effort when you're pronouncing it. Unfortunately, we can't give an ironclad definition of how the stress is articulated because different speakers do it slightly differently. Now, for native speakers, the stress is almost never any kind of an issue. It's learned, it's understood. But for adults learning English who have spoken another language, they could have difficulty both in hearing where the stress is and then in reproducing where the stress is. And it really is important. And I'll give you a few examples of that as we go along. So there are definitely some accents of English that are quite challenging to understand because of the stress and rhythm that are used. So Indian English, people from India or Pakistan, the speed, the rhythm, the groupings in the English that they speak can make it really hard for an American to understand. There aren't the individual stressed syllables given that extra prominence that we expect. Everything's a little bit flatter, and it makes it kind of hard for us to pick out what's going on. Our ability to find words in their stream of speech is a little bit compromised. Also, Chinese, Japanese, Korean accented English, these accents also don't give quite enough attention, due to the nature of the first language, to the stress, and it can make it difficult. So having the correct stress on a word really contributes significantly to the comprehensibility and to the naturalness. It's not really a problem for kids, but it really is a problem for adults learning English. So the stress impacts the pronunciation. So that means it's really important for you as you transcribe. And when we transcribe, you don't always have to transcribe where the stress is, but when you do, I'll particularly ask you to do that. And we use just a straight apostrophe before the stressed syllable to mark it. Even though other systems might put something on the vowel, this apostrophe goes before any part of the stressed syllable, the consonants included. So it goes way at the beginning of that. Yes.
There's a problem in the,
Yep.
in the newsroom.
Can I just keep going?
You can keep going, yeah.
Perfect.
I'm going to leave the door open and crack so I can sneak back
Sure.
in. But
Very good.
okay,
Thanks.
sorry.
Yeah, no problem. All right. We're going to start from the beginning. It's a very good place to start. These words, content words of one syllable. Eat, drink, plump, burp. Now let's go to some two-syllable words. Now this is where we can do a contrast between the two-syllable words with stress on the first syllable and the two-syllable words with stress on the second syllable, because they feel different, and I want you to get that idea of how they feel different. So first one here is sherry. So that's got stress on the first. And the first one of the other set with stress on the second syllable is charade. Sherry, charade. I hope you can hear that big difference. Okay, so then we've got back up to those with stress on the first syllable. Over, rebel, giant, picture, heating, easy, eagle, Easter, even, owner, ocean, inner, index, infant, teacher, plural, certain, larynx, practice. So that's all a ba-ba. Then the next ones are ba-ba. Charade, overt, rebel, today, ahead, allow, lane, elect, erupt, enough, obese, oblige, involve, berserk, suppose, aware, reveal. So really a different sound when the stress is on the second syllable. We even find some interesting generalizations about nouns and verbs with respect to where the stress is. Usually a noun will have its stress on, if it's a two-syllable noun, it will usually have its stress on the first syllable. If it's a two-syllable verb, though, it often has a stress on the second. So that's pretty cool. There are a lot of patterns present in our words that we're only vaguely aware of. And that's one of the things that this class will do for you, is help to make those patterns noticeable, help you think about them, and work with them. Okay, now I'd like you, so these are all as close as I could come to some stress pairs with these. So I think it would be a fabulous idea for you to try to transcribe these. I am not going to do them all, but we're going to talk about what the transcriptions would be, okay? So we've got toddy, today, right? First column has first syllable stress, second column has second syllable stress. Booty, boutique, supper, suppose, sherry, charade, Susan, Suzanne, secret, secrete, revel, reveal. Okay, so we've got two different possibilities. Toddy, today. Okay, booty, boutique. All right, next. So let's stress pairs. Okay, so we do sometimes have words, same spelling, but the noun has one stress pattern and the verb has a different stress pattern. So that would be the case here. So for a noun, a compress versus a giant squeezing machine will compress, right? So compress, that will have the stress on the first syllable, but compress will have stress on the second. Okay, digest, like Reader's Digest versus digest, digestion, so that has stress on the second. A project, project, versus project. In project, you've got the stress on the ject. Record, an old vinyl record, stress on the first syllable, versus the verb record, stress on the second. And then contract, a contract, a noun, stress on the first, but for something to shorten, contract, stress on the second. So stress really does impact how you'll transcribe certain words, which is okay. It's part of the learning. So the wedge, hut, and the R-colored 3, are going to be used for stressed syllables. The schwa and the R-colored schwa are going to be used for unstressed syllables. So if we look at a word like pervert, pervert, that first syllable will use the stressed one, the 3 with the R coloring, and the second syllable will use the schwa with the R coloring. Or stir, first syllable will use the bird vowel, second will use the schwa R. Fervor, same thing, okay? Fervor, the bird vowel and then the vowel, okay? And a word like above, that will have schwa and then above using the wedge. So, as you know, I like to give you a lot of different examples. And one of the types of examples that I think are really interesting is looking at poetry. So classical poetry, after the Renaissance, depends upon rhymes and the location of stress in words. So here are two examples from Shakespeare showing the regularity of stress, but one set is an I am, the first part, and the second one are trochees. So I am is weak strong, but a trochee is strong weak. And you can see here the really different feeling that you get in these lines depending upon how the stress falls. So the first one with the I ams, which is more like regular standard spoken English, Two households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona where we lay our scene. Contrast that with the weird sisters in Macbeth with their cauldron. Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble, fire, burn, and cauldron bubble. So really different feeling on that. So if you're skeptical about stress, think about this. Shakespeare used it to his advantage. Who are we to not do that? Okay, now here's some words. Let's figure out where the stress is ourselves. Injure, injure. Design, arrive, worry, bellow, below. Okay, think about that, and then I'll come back and give you the answers. Okay, injure, injure, first syllable. Because if it was second, it would sound like this, injure, but it doesn't. Injure. Okay, design, second. If it was on the first, it would sound like design, but it doesn't. It's design. Okay, arrive, second syllable. If it were on the first, it would sound more like arrive, and it doesn't. Worry, first syllable, because it's not worry, which sounds funny. Oh, don't worry. It sounds like a French accent, actually. Bellow, first syllable, and below, second syllable. I hope that makes sense to everybody. If not, you can ask me about it. I'll be back soon. Here's some more for you. Okay, booties, baby booties, first syllable stress. Now, a marquee, the name on a theater. Marquee, second syllable. Now, okay, a convert, someone who converts to another religion. Then now, convert, first syllable stress. Convert, the verb, second syllable stress. Okay, a pervert, the noun, first syllable stress. But if you're somebody that's making things all perverted, you pervert. So second syllable stress there. And a makeup, compact, or the Mayflower compact, first syllable stress, versus smushing your trash, compact, second syllable stress, compact. I think it would be a wonderful idea for you to try to transcribe these different words with the different stress patterns. That's going to make this very clear in your minds. Oh, now we come to third syllable stress. No, three syllable words. Okay, so logically, when we had the two syllable words, the stress could be on the first or the second syllable. Now we have three syllables. Stress could be on the first, it could be on the second, or it could be on the third. And these words sound very different depending where the stress is. It's something that we as native speakers simply learn, but it's more complicated than that for people who are picking up English later in their lives. So let me first read some three-syllable words with first syllable stress so you can feel that pattern. Energy, operate, organize, noisily, horrible, insolent, mystery, caraway, Michigan. Okay. Now the second syllable. Memorial, assumption, Missouri, confusion, repulsive, computer, charisma, aroma, contagious. So, got it? And now for the third. Sometimes when you've got stress on the third syllable of a three-syllable word, there's a little bit of stress on the first syllable. It can be a little fishy. But for these, I'm pretty sure that the primary stress is on the third syllable. Japanese, volunteer, minuet, reimburse, decompose, reapply, masquerade, contradict. So it's okay? So you can, first syllable, Michigan. Second syllable, Missouri. third syllable. Japanese. Often the different places, when we look at different places, we can get all kinds of stress patterns. So those are good to rely on for that. As you can imagine, even more patterns for the 4-syllable words. Actually not that bad though, because having stress only on the 4th syllable is pretty unusual. In English, we really like to alternate stresses, so we don't like to have 3 unstressed syllables and then a stressed, because that sounds strange to us. Okay, so for first syllable stress in a 4-syllable word, we've got secondary, calculator. For second syllable stress in a 4-syllable, psychology, evaporate, certificate, industrial. Now on the 3rd syllable in a 4-syllable word, politician, reputation, Arizona. Okay? And now this is a stretch, but I love to be able to fill in all the boxes. 4th stress on the final syllable of a 4-syllable word. I know it's a stretch. Hullabaloo. What is all this hullabaloo? My grandmother said that, along with coupon, quite a bit. Okay, so as we get higher than 3 syllables, it is hard to find comparisons or examples of everything. So, whoops, hold on. Okay, so after hullabaloo, let's move on to picking out the stress in a few words. Okay, pick out the stress syllable for me. Crocodile, artichoke, misconstrue, fiasco, pioneer, vanilla, and calendar. Think about that for a moment. Where's the stress? Crocodile, first syllable. Artichoke, first syllable. Misconstrue, third syllable, right? So misconstrue is like Japanese, 3rd syllable. Fiasco, 2nd. Pioneer, 3rd. Vanilla, 2nd. Calendar, 1st. So sometimes if you're unsure where the stress is, I play this game of checking the stress out on each syllable. So, for example, if it was crocodile and I wasn't sure which syllable had the main stress, I would go through and I would give stress to each of the syllables and then decide which sounded the least weird, right? So, crocodile, well, that sounds pretty good. Crocodile, oh, that's awful. Crocodile, yeah, bad. Crocodile, not really, okay? Or for artichoke, artichoke, no. Artichoke, no. So you get the idea. Try that out. Put stress on different syllables. Let's do it with vanilla, actually. Vanilla, no. Vanilla, vanilla, right? So vanilla, it's the second, because that is what doesn't sound like I'm completely insane. Here's another set for us to pick out the stress syllables. Pistachio, portfolio, Arizona, Arabia, armadillo, Filipino, and millennia. So I would like you to think for a few minutes, a few moments, and then we'll see where the stress is for you. Pistachio. So here I can do my, put the stress, pistachio, no, pistachio. Oh, that sounds pretty good. Pistachio, pistachio. What? No. Pistachio. No. So it's on the second. Pistachio. Portfolio, second. Arizona, third. Arabia, second. Armadillo, third. Filipino, third. And millennia, second. I hope this is making sense to you. I hesitate to tell you that it took me about 15 years to get good at this. I am a person with poor musical and rhythmic skills, so I bet you'll get it faster than I did. Haha, 5-syllable words. Okay, So remember that in the 3-syllable words, we found if there was a first and third syllables might both have some stress because we like to alternate the stresses. So you'll find in these 5-syllable words it can be hard to pick out which one has the stress. But we'll work on it. Don't worry about it. Okay, electricity. Electricity. So I think it's on the third. Maybe a little bit of stress on the first. Electricity. Okay, so hippopotamus. Hippopotamus. So I think there's a little bit on hip, but then potamus has the main stress. Incompatible, third syllable. Refrigerator, second, fridge. Because it's not refrigerator or refrigerator. That sounds hilarious. Refrigerator, that would be third, but it's second, refrigerator. Sociology, sociology, so third syllable. Technological, logical, third. Organization, ooh, that one has stress pretty far back. Organization, so the fourth. Participation, fourth. Magnification, examination. So those have main stress on the fourth, but a little bit of stress going on in the earlier syllables as well, so that we don't have too many unstressed syllables in the row. English loves to alternate stress. Weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong. We love it. Now try this. I've got a tongue twister for you. Well, actually, let's first start with this business that used to be in my hometown that I could almost never say. The business was raising llamas and alpacas, and they called themselves a cappella alpacas. Try to say that fast. It's very hard. My mother would laugh at me for not being able to say that. This was like 5 years ago, too, when I was an adult. Okay, now, here's the tongue twister. So there are a lot of tongue twisters, mostly shine my city shoes, you know, that kind of stuff. This is one of the very few that actually have to do with stress. It's extremely hard. So here it is. Many an anemone is an enemy anemone. Okay, so try this fast. Many an anemone is an enemy anemone. Many an anemone is an enemy anemone. And you start to lose it. It's a fun one. One of my favorites.